April 13th, 2026 Eugene City Council meeting. Thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format. Anyone wishing to access the meeting remotely can do so by watching the live stream on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by following the instructions on the city's public webcasts and meeting materials webpage. Tonight's meeting will include a public comment period. If you wish to speak, please fill out a request to speak form on our public webcast and meeting materials webpage, or at the entrance to this room. We'll accept request forms until 7:35 p.m. These forms will be used to generate the order of speakers and accurately enter speakers' names into the public record. The public comment period will be limited to 90 minutes or conclude by 9:50 p.m., whichever occurs first, to provide sufficient time to address all of our agenda items. If the number of speakers extends the time we have allotted, we encourage speakers to consider abbreviating their remarks so the maximum number of speakers can be heard. For those joining the meeting remotely, you're welcome to email your comments to City Council. As a reminder, Council's meeting rules of conduct apply to all attendees, both in the chambers and in the lobby, and include no flags, signs, loud or disruptive language, noise or conduct that obstructs the business of the Council. Please keep the room quiet and respectful for all speakers. You are welcome to wave your hands in silent support. We encourage those that are ill to join our meetings remotely rather than in person, and we do have masks available in the back of the room or in the lobby if you need one. In case of a medical emergency, an automated external defibrillator is located on the counter behind staff at the west side of the room. Emergency exits are through the double doors located at the back of the room and the double doors near the front of the room. And the doors to the patio can also be used as needed. And with that, I call the April 13th, 2026 meeting of the Eugene City Council to order. Since time immemorial, the Kalapuya people have been the indigenous stewards of our region, building dynamic communities, maintaining balance with wildlife, and enacting sustainable land practices. This land acknowledgement is a way of resisting the erasure of indigenous histories and to honor Native communities by inviting truth and reconciliation. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. As we consider the impacts of colonization, we also acknowledge the strength and resiliency of displaced indigenous people. The city of Eugene is built within the traditional homelands known as the Kalapuya Ilihi. Kalapuya descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, Community of Oregon, and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians of Oregon. We continue to make contributions in our communities here and across our lands. We express our respect for the inherent political sovereignty of all federally recognized tribal nations and indigenous people who live in the state of Oregon and across the nation. Our first item on tonight's agenda is ceremonial matters. I believe our mayor is joining us virtually to make a few remarks about these proclamations.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Council President Leach. It's wonderful to join you even remotely this evening. As you all know, our mayoral proclamations, we have the opportunity to share at our first regular meeting of each month and as our first agenda item. And this month we have several designated that we would like, I'd like to share with you. These are available on the City of Eugene's website and will also be shared through different channels and into the community and with organizations who also have reached out and advocated for this opportunity to bring awareness to these concerns. So on March 29th of 2026, we are marking Education and Sharing Day in the City of Eugene. On April 1st, we have 3 proclamations, one to acknowledge April as Child Abuse Prevention Month. April 1st will also be the beginning of Dark Sky Month within the City of Eugene, and is also the month that every year we celebrate Fair Housing Month, and this year is no different. On April 22nd, we'll celebrate Earth Day. And on the weekend of April 24th through the 26th, the Eugene Marathon will again be in Eugene and all around the Eugene-Springfield area. We hope our community will be engaged and participate in that event that draws so many people to our community and is out on the streets for people to enjoy. On April 28th, we have celebration of Arbor Day, and on April 30th, Vietnamese Remembrance Day. Hope you'll join me in marking these events and learning more about these touch points within our community. And thank you, Council President, for a few moments to share them tonight.
Thank you, Mayor, for sharing about all of those amazing proclamations. Our second item on tonight's agenda is committee reports and items of interest. And I will open the floor for committee reports. And I do know our city manager has some remarks to make as well. Turn it to you, Matt.
Thank you, Council President. So I wanted to share a high-level update on implementation of Resolution 5474. So earlier today, I emailed all of you an update on our progress and work for Resolution 5474, which passed on February 9th, related to declaring a humanitarian crisis related to federal immigration enforcement. Staff continue to work on coordination, language access, trauma-informed practices, and community partnerships. As part of that resolution, we committed to providing you updates on its implementation. Because this is the first update, I have quite a bit to share, and we'll summarize some of it here so the public can hear about it too. Our Office of Equity and Community Engagement continues active participation in the United for Immigrant Justice Coalition to support community coordination. A weekly state-issued immigrant refugee newsletter is available for council to support ongoing education, and we will plan to send that to you. Trauma-informed governance work continues through proclamations, equity consulting, Human Rights Commission programming and training of staff and first responders. The Language Access Program remains available to all departments with Spanish as the primary supported language. Resources include consultations, the weekly Aquí en la Ciudad news segment, internal bilingual staff support, a Spanish language webpage, and an upcoming Spanish Facebook page. Sorry. Cherish, I don't know if we need to adjust volume. I'm pretty close on the mic here. Staff are researching options for multilingual guidance, potentially through the Language Access Program and supplemented by translation services where needed. The Office of Equity and Community Engagement continues supporting hate and bias reporting and Sanctuary Promise Act compliance, expanded materials in collaboration with partner agencies. City staff provide assistance to community groups accessing city resources, and the Human Rights Commission sponsorship continues to support events serving immigrant and refugee communities. The resolution provides amicus participation when appropriate, and we're monitoring through those opportunities. And we'll continue to provide periodic updates on this work. Also on February 9th, he passed a motion to dedicate funding to local agencies supporting immigrants. As directed by Council, the Office of Equity and Community Engagement and the Human Rights Commission established a special grant process to distribute the allocated $50,000. A streamlined application was launched with criteria focused on organizational capacity, experience serving immigrant families, financial controls, and limited overhead. 5 organizations have applied. An HRC subcommittee is actively reviewing applications with first awards expected as early as this week.
Thank you so much, City Manager. Does anyone else have any items of interest? I'm going to put myself in the queue. If not seeing any. I wanted to share, and then I do have a motion to make. In our last council meeting on Wednesday, April 8th, we had a work session on economic development and long-range financial planning. This is something that we have been working on for a long time, and we have a lot of work sessions on and good work that we are doing as a body. However, in the previous work session, we were presented with an option to move forward with adding $800,000 of staff positions in economic development to our supplemental budgeting process. The way that our vote was decided was 3-3 because with a tiebreaker from the mayor, because 2 of our councilors were not able to be present for that vote. I think adding such a large piece to our budget, such an amount to our budget, needs to be decided by more than 3 members of this council. So I am making a motion so that we can come back to this topic and discuss it further, get a little bit more information, and put it next to other things that we are considering to place into our budget. This motion does not change the motion that was made on Wednesday. It just gives us an ability to have more information presented to us at a later date. So with that, I move to direct the city manager to include in council's June 8th work session on unfunded needs, information, and an opportunity to discuss the 3 economic development staff positions costing $800,000 a year.
Second.
Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Council President. I don't know, Matt, if you can tell me a summary of the June 8th meeting. Would you say this would likely be included, if not for the impact of the motion that the council has already passed, would be discussed in that meeting already?
Councilor Clark, I think we would include mention of those positions throughout the long-range financial planning process. But if council wishes to make a motion to be explicit about that is fine, and we can make sure we have
Thank you.
Discussion.
Councilor Leach, I'm unclear what our motion makes different than would be the case either way. Could you help me understand that?
Sure. My intention is that we have dedicated time to look at these 3 positions paired with all of the other unfunded needs that we'll be looking at in our budget, because we know that these positions currently are unfunded and they will have to come with cost, right? An opportunity cost or cutting something else out of our budget. When we were presented this information on this past Wednesday, we were not given information about what might be cut or what we might have to give up in order to place these positions into our staff. I think it is a conversation that needs more than 15 minutes of discussion and more than 3 votes on this council to move forward. And I think that we needed dedicated time for that.
I'm always happy to hear my colleagues' opinions on especially budget-related items, so it'll be fine to do, but it sounds to me like at least some manner of reconsideration involved, and I'm not interested in reconsideration. I'll probably vote no because it seems a little too close to reconsideration when, in my opinion, what we did in our last action was critically important to the long-term future of our city, and if we don't do it, we'd be in real trouble. So I'm hopeful that we don't go through a process of reconsideration if, in fact, this motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Clark. Is there any other councilors that have questions or discussion? With that, I will call a vote. Can staff look at Mr. Councilor Keating's? Perfect, thank you. So the motion passes 5-3. Thank you, staff, and thank you, councilors, for entertaining that motion. Our 3rd item on tonight's agenda is approval of consent calendar 1. If there are no questions from council, I will turn to the council vice president to put a motion forward.
I move to approve the items on consent calendar 1.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion from council? Seeing none, I will now take the vote for this motion.
Well done.
Excellent, and that motion is approved, 8-0. That concludes our 3rd agenda item. The next item on tonight's agenda is public comment. Public comment period is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues except for those items that have already been heard by a hearings official. As a reminder, public comment period will be limited to 90 minutes or conclude by 9:50 p.m., whichever occurs first, to have sufficient time to address all items on tonight's agenda. Staff, can you please share the list and number of speakers that signed up to speak by 7:35 and announce the first speakers?
Thank you, Council President. Yes, we have 35 speakers signed up tonight. I will announce 2 speakers' names at a time. When you are called to speak, please state your name and your ward or neighborhood, if known, before beginning your comments. When you are announced as the next speaker, please move to the seat in the front row designated for the next speaker. When it is your turn, you may come to the podium. Please leave any bags you may have with you at your seat. If you have documents to give council, please place them in the basket near the podium. You will have 2.5 minutes to speak. The timer will flash red when you have 15 seconds remaining to speak. Your microphone will be muted at the 2.5-minute mark. Please note that the use of profanity is not prohibited. Or the use of profanity is not permitted. It is definitely prohibited. Our first speakers this evening are Lynn Woodrich, followed by Shasha Brisby.
My name's Lynn Woodrich. I'm the co-chair of the Active Bethel community and a Bethel resident for over 30 years. I live in Ward 8. I'm speaking today on behalf of our board. At the State of the City address, Mayor Knutson said, "I think we need to begin thinking differently about Highway 99, its future as a safer, greener, multimodal boulevard. It needs to be reimagined, and as with so many other examples, we can bring a new spirit of collaboration to this work. For Bethel, this vision would be a dream come true. Today, Highway 99 is an eyesore and a dangerous corridor, particularly for residents navigating heavy traffic and frequent crossings near concentrated homeless services. We're eager to begin this reimagining and collaboration. Our Bethel plan has a work session on April 22nd that we're looking forward to. As part of the plan, Bethel needs a police substation on Highway 99. It doesn't need to be fancy. The city created a downtown incident commander to improve safety, cleanliness, and rapid response downtown. Bethel deserves the same level of commitment and coordination. I also want to urge your support for Public Health Standards version 3, which is the planning staff's choice, scheduled to have a public hearing on April 20th. This is a first step in protecting the public. Without the applicants participating in the application process, we risk approving projects that threaten air and water quality, undermine climate goals, reduce property values, and erode neighborhood livability. The proposed USD Clean Fuels Distribution Center and the fuel tank farm in the Trainsong neighborhood are clear examples. These proposed facilities are located in an already overburdened residential area near Bethel Drive. They should be moved further north with access through established industrial zones and away from homes. In the event of an explosion, these sites would not only endanger residents, but could also cripple nearby emergency services and public works. Public health standards must be incorporated into our comprehensive plan, so land use decisions genuinely protect people in neighborhoods, not just meet minimum technical requirements. The delay in the USD Clean Fuels Distribution Center LUBA response must be waiting for our new city manager to be in place on April 15th. We hope it will be prioritized. Eugene can grow while still protecting its people. Together, we can ensure development that's both responsible and resilient and worthy of the communities we serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Our next speakers are Shasha Brisby, followed by Robert Parrish.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for declaring April Dark Sky Month. I hope someday to see the Milky Way above our beautiful city. But more importantly, the proposed fence around the federal building will endanger immigrants, protesters, and uninvolved members of the public. This danger makes it imperative for the city to decry its construction through denial of permits, public denunciation, and any other avenues available to it. For dozens of our community members, the federal building has been the last thing they've seen of our beautiful city before being dragged away by ICE agents. The threshold of that building is often our last chance of getting legal aid to our neighbors, our last chance to alert their family and friends, and our last chance to raise the alarm when our friends are violently ripped away from us. The proposed fence would kneecap these efforts, preventing documentation by legal observers, blocking attempts to render aid to victims, and slowing the community's response to ICE violence. This fence will embolden and enable ICE, giving them a wall to hide behind as they brutalize our neighbors. The proposed fence will also endanger nonviolent protesters. Allowing violent federal agents to dictate when and where the public is allowed to voice their discontent is a recipe for escalatory crackdowns on free expression. The plaza that the GSA are touting as a zone for First Amendment rights is the exact same plaza where 3 months ago, A dozen agents in riot gear and 2 snipers were deployed in broad daylight to suppress and brutalize a lone trans woman who's been protesting there since July. It is the same plaza where agents started a brush fire and used chemical munitions to disperse a nonviolent protest later that week. The federal government thinks safety is when they can control and suppress dissent, and this fence is the latest attempt to do so. When weapons are deployed now, protesters can expand into the plaza and along the sidewalks, flowing around the building and away from the danger. If instead, protesters are forced to pack into just the plaza, with sidewalks potentially obstructed, use of violence will force protesters to flee into oncoming traffic, endangering motorists and bystanders. Given the clear danger the proposed fence represents, it's vital that the city do everything in its power to prevent its construction. If a right-of-way permit is filed for, it must be denied, not because of who the applicant is, but because issuing it would directly endanger your constituents, enabling ICE to escalate the humanitarian crisis you yourselves declared. If a right-of-way permit isn't filed for and the GSA builds onto city property, likely, as they've repeatedly shown in ignorance of property lines, they must be fought. Regardless, your public condemnation of the proposed fence would demonstrate your continued dedication to protecting the immigrants under your care. Thank you.
Thank you, Shasha. Our next speakers are Robert Parrish, followed by Connor Neal.
Robert Parrish here, Ward 7. A year, as of this month, the people of Eugene have been without cahoots for a year now. And sadly, they must wait longer. I have many thoughts and feelings about this RFP. Even though I can speak clearly and very quickly, 2.5 minutes is scant time for such content. We lost our famous, cherished, cost-effective alternative response program that took 20,000 calls off the non-emergency and 911 system per year and made a mental health worker and a medic available for free to the public. Perhaps, with the rest of my time, I'll survey the people gathered here. Raise your hands if you benefited from having cahoots in your city. Raise your hands if you ever met someone not from Eugene who knew about cahoots. Raise your hands if you want a service to replace cahoots that's as similar as possible to what we lost. I so appreciate that support from the community, and I will end with this. We really need to reinvent the wheel here.
Thank you, Robert. Our next speakers are Connor Neal, followed by Jackson Smith.
Hi. I signed up for this last minute because I wanted to point out that it's nearly impossible to get here as a disabled person if you're taking LTD. The closest bus is about 6 minutes away, and the late time of this is perfect for work schedules, but the bus schedule makes it a little bit rough. I probably should buy LTD with us. Also, cahoots, dark sky. I ran out of thoughts. I'm running away now. Peace.
Thank you, Connor. Our next speakers are Jackson Smith, followed by Ty Warren.
Hello, my name is Jackson Smith. I'm a student at the University of Oregon, and I have attended a number of peaceful protests at the Eugene Federal Building. In the past few months, and eventually, I have found myself at the January 28th Federal Building protest. I was among the protesters who were tear gassed at the peaceful assembly at the building, culminating in my need for medical assistance. The proposal for a fence denying protesters their right to the plaza misunderstands the cause behind the escalation of events at the Federal Building. It was DHS that first charged protesters around 1 p.m. on the 28th of January. It was DHS that sent out a second sortie and brutally captured a peaceful protester. It was DHS that threw a flashbang and began tear gassing, and began unleashing chemical weapons against us. A fence that prohibits protesters forgets that all levels of escalation are on the behalf of rogue government agents. I urge this council not to protect these agents, and I urge this council to protect this community and deny any permits to build fences at the Federal Building. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. A reminder to speakers to introduce your first, last name, and ward or neighborhood if known. Our next speakers are Ty Warren, followed by Jacob True.
Hi, I'm Ty Warren. I'm in Ward 7. I want to thank you for mentioning the $50,000 grant process for declaring that the immigration enforcement issue is a humanitarian crisis. Thank you for that. Going on top of that, I want to talk about the federal building, the proposed fence. You're probably going to hear from a few people this evening about that, and talking about the problems that the fence proposes, or that the fence will bring up, which is access, sidewalk access potentially, there's disabled access. It will also limit the ability of legal observers to watch the activity in the building. It limits the ability of protesters to watch what's happening in the building and who's leaving and who's being kidnapped, because our neighbors are being kidnapped out of that building. As someone said earlier, the federal building is often the last thing some people in our community see. The only people that fence will protect is ICE and DHS. And if you as a council have decided that immigration enforcement is a humanitarian crisis, then you need to be very vocal about your, what's the word that I'm looking for? Standing against it, right? So it's not a matter of simply not issuing permits. That's not what I'm looking for. I need you to be vocal about standing against this, right? It needs to be an attitude. It needs to be a way of presenting yourself to this community. It's about not complying in advance, right? If you ever wondered, and I know that we ask ourselves this question a lot, but if you ever wondered what would happen when a fascist government is taking over, what you would be doing, you're doing it right now. So think about that, and be not just don't issue permits on city property for this, but also be very vocal and against this and condemn the fence entirely. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ty. Our next speakers are Jacob True, followed by Michael Wallace.
Council. My name is Jacob True, and I'm from Ward 1, and I'm here to talk about public safety. I was here 1 year ago when we lost community response, when we lost Cahoots. Very busy time of year for me. I'm a forensic and tax accountant, and we're coming up on the tax due date here this week. So it's a bit of a struggle to get here, but I just can't help myself. I was also here about 5 years ago, trying to advocate for increasing the contract to Whitebird for Cahoots when they were saying that, hey, prices for wages weren't competitive. And, I've spoken with just about every single one of you here on the council, and every single time, all of you have said that you love Cahoots, that Cahoots is something that was really special here in Eugene, that community response, model for the country, fantastic program. And it's breaking my heart that through all this, we're still not getting anything back like what we wanted. So, yeah, I do want to say that, when the RFP process went through, WVCC took you at your word that what you wanted was return to services like what we had a year ago. Response that WVCC put forward was designed so they could scale outwards into the return of a real community response like what it is that we lost. In the evaluation, in the responses, they were docked points, because they were angling to be able to expand outward into the kind of response that you wanted to see here, and that you all indicated in conversations with you and all your public comments too. Just last week at the City Club of Eugene, Mike Clark, you said you wanted Cahoots back. Councilor Evans, you said you wanted Cahoots back. Service like that. All of your opponents said, yeah, we want Cahoots back. We love Cahoots. We want it back. But here we are. We were given a chance, and it didn't go that way. Ideal Option, PLLC, an out-of-state, Washington-based for-profit private limited liability company, is the folks who got that RFP. They do good works in their Suboxone clinics, but let's be clear. The city's not going to have an option for citizens to call for community response like street response in Portland or what we had a year ago. We don't get coverage for all the city. We just get a couple areas. The vans, they're still sitting there.
Thank you, Jacob. Our next speakers are Michael Wallace, followed by Anna.
Hello, I am Michael Wallace. I live in Southeast Eugene, Ward 2. Last July, the Climate Friendly Landscape Committee of the Eugene Sustainability Commission sent its memo on policy options for gas-powered leaf blowers to the mayor, city council, and city manager. This memo concludes, quote, in response to community input and in alignment with Eugene's climate goals, it is important for the City Council to address the impact of gas-powered leaf blowers. Examining the practices in other jurisdictions, such as Portland, can inform the development of an equitable and effective path forward for Eugene. End quote. Portland's seasonal ban started in January. Its full ban takes effect in 2028. No longer are gas leaf blowers used seasonally to blow fallen leaves. We are confronted year-round by loud gas-powered machines fouling our air and assaulting our ears. There are better ways to manage leaves. Electric blowers are a great option. Batteries are not more difficult or expensive than gasoline. Rakes are reliable. Raking is relaxing. I call on City Council to ban gas-powered leaf blowers. Start with seasonal restrictions with a complete ban going into effect in a few years, giving current users time to switch to electric machines or other alternatives. Time to act is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Our next speakers are Anna, followed by Jan.
My name is Anna. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an organizer with Trans Alliance of Lane County. You're going to hear from a lot of people today about the reasons why you should not be colluding with the feds to build this fence. But lost in this is the toll of the fence. Lost in this is the toll of the detention system, of the kidnapping system, of the border system. We all know the names Alex Preddy and Renee Good, but we don't know the names of the dozens of Black and brown people who have died in this last year. I'm going to name now 17 of those names, the 16 that we know of that have died in detention, as well as one who died shortly after release, because that is why you need to deny anything associated with this fence, and why when you look back on this time, you can ask yourself, what did I do to protect these people? Geraldo Lunos Campos, Luis Gustavo Núñez Cáceres, Luis Beltran Yanez Cruz, Parade La, Heber Sanchez Dominguez, Victor Manuel Diaz, Lorth Sim, Jairo Garcia Hernandez, Nurul Amin Shah Alam, Alberto Gutierrez Reyes, Emmanuel Clifford Damas, Hejman Karshenis Najafabadi, Mohammed Nazir Paktiawal, Joyer Perez Jimenez, Jose Guadalupe Ramos Solano, Juan Bandui, Alejandro Cabrera Clemente. I understand that some of you may have opinions about the protesters in Eugene. You may have disagreements about tactics. You may have disagreements about things that happened. And I invite you to come and talk to protesters about that. Don't deny the fence permits for them. Deny the fence permits for these 17 people and all the other people who are dying in ICE facilities due to deliberate medical neglect. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Our next speakers are Jan, followed by Naftali Renshaw.
Hello. On February 9th, Eugene City Council declared a humanitarian crisis due to federal immigration actions. The resolution reads, "The City Council affirms its commitment to human rights, due process, family unity, and human dignity, and condemns actions that result in detention or deportation without meaningful access to legal protections." Mayor Knudsen also signed a letter from Governor Kotek with 30 other Oregon City mayors addressed to then DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and Tom Homan. The letter demanded an immediate halt to federal immigration enforcement. After hearing those statements, you would think that the city of Eugene would want nothing to do with the process of constructing a fence around the federal building, because a fence in this context will make it more difficult for community members to be safe during ICE office check-ins, harder for legal observers to document ICE kidnappings, and easier for ICE to hide the fact that they are kidnapping our neighbors at all. Instead, the city has been exchanging emails with the feds starting February 19th, discussing construction of the fence, just 10 days after it declared a humanitarian crisis. EPD Chief Skinner confirmed that his department will be part of the fencing process in some capacity, and that the city of Eugene is helping to facilitate the operation by shutting down streets and handling any necessary permits. Some have said, well, the federal government can do whatever it wants with federal property. It doesn't need permission from the city. I'd argue if the city truly cares about its immigrant constituents, it would at the very least publicly condemn this move by the feds and dig in its heels to slow the process. Others have said that blocking the streets and providing permits is what the city would do for any property owner. But I'd argue that if a regular business tried to construct a fence like this in such a public space, the city wouldn't give them special treatment and backdoor channels for communicating with city officials. They would have to do the runaround of dealing with permits, regulations, city codes. But because it's the federal government, the city wants to keep things convenient and comfortable for themselves, even if it means more of their constituents are kidnapped. We are living under a fascist regime where masked men are kidnapping Eugenians in broad daylight off our streets and from the regular check-in appointments from that. Hello? Oh. This being one of the reasons why a humanitarian crisis was declared by this council. Despite this, the city has decided to work behind closed doors following no public process for the sake of transparency, and even EPD slapped on an $11,000 fee on a records request of the project, essentially acting as a blockade to any transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Our next speakers are Naftali Renshaw, followed by Emily Beatty.
Thank you for listening to us tonight. My name is Naftali Renshaw. I'm a local pastor, nonprofit director. I'm on the leadership teams of a number of local organizations and nonprofits. I was tear gassed in January, and I have been on site for 5.5 hours after DHS tackled a 15-year-old and drugged them into the federal building. Now I want to speak to my friends here. Dear friends, I know why you are here. You are here because you believe that public leaders should be held accountable for the promises we make to our citizens. You believe that sanctuary is more than a string of empty words. Rather, it is a sacred commitment to not concede or collaborate or collude with those who prey upon our neighbors. You are here because our neighbors are counting on us to act as though we meant our promise. Because you recognize that violence is a thread that weaves itself around the world. Dili and Palestine, Tacoma and Iran. And it starts here with what we allow here in our neighborhoods, in our communities. We don't concede or collaborate with masked men who prey upon our neighbors. We don't build walls. I've heard it said that we cannot deny permits based on who asked for them. Yet Multnomah County recently amended their sanctuary law to prohibit ICE access to all county property. I strongly encourage the city of Eugene to pursue similar action and courageously, vocally, and actionably condemn ICE's presence and predatory behavior and violence in our community. Paraphrase the theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, we must do more than bandage wounds. We must drive spokes into the wheels of injustice. Thank you.
Thank you, Naftali. Our next speakers are Emily Beatty, followed by Debbie Williamson.
Okay. Hi, my name is Emily Beatty. I'm a member of the Graduate Teaching Fellows Federation, which is the graduate labor union at the University of Oregon, where I am a fifth-year PhD student. I'm also a member of Ward 8. I've been a bike commuter in Eugene for the last 5 years, and for 4 years before that in Philadelphia. I've come to urge the city to take urgent, if not immediate, action that ensures the safety of our whole community. I don't feel inclined to make a poetic argument about why this matters. The fact is, people's lives are at stake. Recently, our union lost a member, Eric, to traffic violence. He was hit by a car found by other GEs of the University of Oregon, and I've heard waited far too long for emergency services to locate him, and he tragically passed away far from his family in Kenya. So again, I've come to urge you all to take immediate action. We're welcoming people from all across the world to study and live in Eugene, but we fail to create the infrastructure necessary to keep them safe. Every day as pedestrians and bikers, we're expected to take full responsibility for our safety, even though these conditions are largely out of our hands. We have to predict how drivers will act, whether they'll let us pass, give us enough room to get to work or home safely, or whether they will blatantly disregard the law and put our lives at risk. And all we ask from the city is to utilize their leadership, access to resources, and access to other bodies of power, including the University of Oregon, to make our streets safe. This isn't something to be solved overnight, of course, but there are things that take minimal effort to achieve. For example, hiring a crossing guard, painting a crosswalk in general, or installing a stop sign. And there are experts in our community ready and willing to help you all enact the more drastic and long-term changes necessary to reach zero traffic deaths in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Our next speakers are Debbie Williamson, followed by Justin Burns.
Hello again, City Council. Thank you for letting me be here tonight. My name is Debbie Williamson. I live in Jefferson West Side and represented in Ward 1. I'm here today as a private citizen to oppose any city support of the fence at the old federal building. That is the building ICE operates from. If you're not aware, we are now at the point of history where as children we asked ourselves, why didn't people do anything as we read The Diary of Anne Frank or read Elie Wiesel's Night. And although it may feel futile, we can do things. And we can use our voices, and we can speak out against the brutal attacks that DHS, BORTAC, and ICE are making against our citizens. A fence is going to make it harder for our immigrant neighbors to be safe. A fence will make it harder for legal observers to document kidnappings. If you do not believe that people are being kidnapped, please come hang out with me at the old federal building, and we can witness it together. A fence will end the legacy of free speech that has existed at the building since construction. You will say we have no control over the fence because it is federal property, but we do have control over what we do as citizens of Eugene. We can deny permits. We can provide the documents from EPD to the CLDC. We can do our part to protect our neighbors from kidnapping, and we can use our voices to protest the fence and oppose the violent actions of the people that are employed there. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Our next speakers are Justin Burns, followed by Andromeda Callan.
Hi, I'm Justin Burns, Ward 8. Yeah, so, everybody's pretty much stated most of the facts of why you guys should not collude with DHS and ICE to, build a fence. It's people at the ICE facility documenting ICE kidnappings and ICE ongoings has helped stop and prevent a lot of kidnappings. Putting a fence up is gonna help DHS. Like a year ago, I started protesting, and you've seen me here several times. Before that, I hadn't protested before. Why? Because I saw that our leaders, and I'm talking about mostly the federal government, I saw our leaders failing us. I know that there's not that many heroes that are being shined. And, so I told myself that I need to try to be the hero that I want to see in the world. It's not easy. It's something that I wish I could try harder at. But you guys are our leaders as far as the city goes. I would love to see you guys make a stand against ICE, against building a fence. Right now is the time to stand up in the wake of a possible war in Iran. Well, there is a war in Iran. Trump's blocking the straits. It's just insane. So, basically, do you guys want to be looked at in history and be seen to be on the same side as DHS and Trump? Those are awful people, and I hope you guys wouldn't taint yourselves and be on their side. Please stand up, make a statement, stop helping with the fence, do what's right.
Thank you, Justin. Our next speakers are Andromeda Callan, followed by Jacob Schmidt.
My name is Andromeda. I live in Ward 1, and I'm a dark sky Oregon advocate. Human beings have a positive phototaxis. We are naturally, instinctively drawn to lights. As a result, light also makes us feel safe and secure, and so we have decided the best way to be safe at night is to have lots of lights. Decades of studies have shown light does exactly that. It makes us feel safe. A U.S. National Institute of Justice study concluded we can have very little confidence that improved lighting prevents crime. In fact, poor or too much lighting can have the opposite effect. Real security depends on the wise use of lighting. The nature of my job means that I am often working outdoors and commuting late at night or early in the morning on a bike. So I am very familiar with the fact that cold, unshielded lighting can cause glare that makes it difficult to see behind the light. If you are also like me and part of the 33% of the population with an astigmatism, that glare is all the worse. Go to Dark Sky Oregon on YouTube to find out more about that. Think of it this way. When you're driving down the road, how distracting and disorienting high beams can be. It feels like they're shining right in your face. Cold, unshielded lights have the same effect. I asked the city of Eugene, in pedestrian areas especially, to have speed-sensitive, motion-activated lights on timers. We are not asking the city of Eugene to go dark. No, we simply want safer and more effective lighting. Also on the matter, knock down a pen. This fence will do no good for the community and actively cause people to go into harm. Having clogged walkways during areas of panic will have people be trampled and harmed, especially with them having the only choice of spilling out into traffic, further endangering them. We need to get ICE out of our community. We need to do our best to stop the Amazon warehouse, and we definitely need to help our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Andromeda. Our next speakers are Jacob Schmidt, followed by Scott Lambert.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacob Schmidt. I live in Ward 7 in the East Blair Housing Co-op. I'm also the Vice President for External Relations of the Graduate Teaching Fellows Federation, union representing over 1,000 graduate employees at the University of Oregon. Also a cyclist and a historian. But enough about me. Back in January, a beloved member of our union and our community here, Eric Munene Niue, was killed by a speeding driver on Patterson Street at the corner of Patterson and 22nd. In the immediate wake of this, members of our union, particularly international students who are here on student visas, reached out to us as their union to asking, what can we do? And so we did what we could. We organized, and we got, we've seen, big outpourings of support, huge memorial services, memorial marches, op-eds in newspapers, flowers, ghost bikes, murals. We've had meetings, we've had community forums, meetings with the mayor and the city manager. But what we haven't seen yet is any physical change to the intersection at which Eric was killed. We know that physically changing street layouts is the only effective way to prevent traffic violence and traffic deaths. And I'm here tonight to call on the city to act, and to act quickly, to make the physical layout of 22nd and Patterson Street, and eventually many, many other intersections around town, safer for those who cross them daily. The objection to these kinds of actions tends to be the cost, but anyone who knew Eric or anyone else killed by traffic violence knows that the cost of the status quo is infinitely higher than any amount of concrete, paint, or bollards. So we call on the city to enact smart street designs that have been proven effective the world over. The city of Hoboken, New Jersey has had no pedestrian deaths in the last 8 years, simply from daylighting intersections, bringing the curbs out further, slowing traffic, bringing greater visibility for people crossing the street. We also call on the city to re-examine policies that require death or serious injury to do anything, right? We know the city that we want to live in. We should be pursuing a positive vision of building a livable, walkable city, a city where students from around the world, where the countries around the world can send their best and brightest to live here, to be full members of our community, and to return home alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Our next speakers are Scott Lambert, followed by Shane Novak.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. My name is Scott Lambert. I am a rank and file member of GTFF 3544 at the University of Oregon and a physics PhD candidate at the U of O. I am here to talk about traffic safety. I used to run with Eric and Joy. He was among the most joyful people I have ever met. It was a devastating loss when he passed. Today, after picking up Jacob from the airport, I saw a scenario on Pearl Street identical to the one that killed Eric and Joy. Luckily, in this case, no one was killed, but I saw a car slow down in front of me, or two cars slowed down in front of me. A pedestrian started to cross the road, and the car who was second in line swerved to go around the car that had slowed down. So I'm here to talk, to echo all of the recommended improvements that Jacob said, physical curve bump outs or similar changes that not only are, that physically require cars to slow down. I think the city can afford to make that investment if given the lives that it will save. I also want to talk about, so Jacob didn't mention this, but I think it's worth mentioning, improvements to public transit to make it more attractive to more people and reduce the number of people who are driving in the first place. If I want to get groceries at Winco right now, getting there on public transit takes 2 to 3 times longer than driving. Given that math, a lot of people just are not going to take public transit. Public transit is safer and less environmentally destructive than small vehicle transportation. I also wanted to note that Eric was biking when he was killed. Bikers take on the risks of navigating traffic and benefit the city by reducing carbon emissions and dangers to pedestrians, drivers, and other bikers. As such, cyclists should be regarded as performing a service to the city and prioritized in the construction of our physical transit infrastructure as such. Finally, we do not want more cops or cameras. Those will not solve the problem of traffic safety. We do not want a fence to protect ICE, and we want a similar service to Cahoots as possible.
Thank you, Scott. Our next speakers are Shane Novak, followed by Dylan Tweet Cianci.
Council, my name is Shane Novak, and I'm a student at the University of Oregon. I'm here tonight to protest the plan to build a fence around the Eugene Federal Building. So I'm going to start off with what you've done so far to protect this community from ICE operations. On January 17th, Mayor Knudsen issued a statement condemning ICE actions nationwide, stating that they are violating rights and using reckless and escalation-oriented actions toward communities nationwide, and later signed on to a letter demanding an end to ICE's operations within the state. So I'm seeing a lot of words and no actions there. On February 9th, the City Council declared a humanitarian crisis due to the ongoing federal immigration actions. A step in the right direction through offering direct assistance to immigrant community through multilingual web resources, but not nearly enough. Through all of this, the fence project has proceeded without any kind of public notice or vote by this council. The Eugene Police Department is blocking transparency by quoting an exorbitant $11,476 fee for public records requests on this fence,
and the proposed fence is planning to block the pedestrian right-of-way along 7th Avenue. This proposed fence is in direct opposition to both the declared humanitarian crisis and all the statements issued by our mayor by protecting federal immigration officers from legal observers and community backlash, and making it much easier for federal agents to use violent tactics and chemical munitions against protesters with a literal wall between them and this community. By building a fence around the federal building, you are not only eliminating the ability for this community to protest and fight back against this administration's unspeakable acts of terrorism against our immigrant community, but you are also building a fortress for ICE to operate out of right in downtown. This community has proven to everyone, including the President of the United States, that we will not back down to infringements on our civil rights and liberties. If you approve this fence, I guarantee you this community will respond, and so far we've seen that this community is willing to do a lot to keep their neighbors safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Our next speakers are Dylan Tweet Cianci, followed by Annabelle Rampersad.
Hi, guys. So I'm here as a representative from Max's Tavern on 13th. I have friends I would rather be hanging out with, but I'm here for a selfish reason. I don't care about human rights. I want the buses to run later. The number one thing that is ruining my life right now is the fact that I get off work at 11 p.m. and there's nothing that I can do outside of get drunk. Here's the thing. I think that the time of the last bus should be tied to 20 minutes after last call. If you really want to get people riding the buses, and like gas prices are going insane, so now is the time to really make a difference, get people riding those buses, get these dum-dums out of cars. Like, let's just be honest. As a city, we're too nice to be trusted with vehicles. I think the number one thing that would actually make a difference is buses running later. Here is the problem. You would have to pay me a heck of a lot of money to drive the bus at 2 in the morning. But I think that if we pay that person $50 an hour to be the LTD 2 a.m. drunk bus driver, that would be your greatest return on investment for the people of Eugene. The other thing that I'd like to talk about, and it's like a word that I'm not hearing, is like public housing. We do have nonprofit house building stuff that's going on, and I love that, but I would love it if we could just use the language and just be like, let's be more like Norway and have public housing. I'm tired of having to wait for a developer. Some guy, let's be honest, small business owners have to be crazy people in order to want to do all of that. But the same group of people are going to end up doing the labor of actually putting buildings up. So why can't we just skip the middleman and say, hey, we want these many units that will rent for this much and are going to have laundry because we're not skimping on everything. I would just love to see public housing just talked about as like a real option. You know, I think we've got a lot of people behind us who would love to see something crazy, something different, and there's really only so much we can do. So, you know, that's what I would do if I had your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. Our next speakers are Annabelle Rampersad, followed by Jasmine Hatmaker.
My name is Annabelle, Ward 3. I'm a grad student at the University of Oregon, and I'm a member of the university's Graduate Teaching Fellows Federation. Some of my fellow GTFF members spoke earlier today. And my statement is also an urge to the council to improve safety of our streets for bikers and pedestrians. So I commute daily by bike, and every day I navigate the one-way couplets surrounding the university, streets like Patterson and Hilliard that are 2-lane one-way streets. And these have been extremely difficult to cross, not just for cyclists, but for anyone on foot. I've experienced the same situation that led to the tragic death of Eric, a fellow GTFF member, earlier this year, wherein one car stops for a pedestrian while the car in the adjacent lane continues through. And in these moments, crossing the street becomes a negotiation with traffic, and it shouldn't be. Crossing the street should be a safe and predictable act. No one should risk their life to cross the street. And this is not about the individual behavior of drivers. This is about street design. So we know from research that street design shapes risk for accidents. One-way couplets like Patterson or Hilliard encourage speeding, and they reduce visibility, and that creates some really dangerous conditions. But we can fix that quite easily. We can make travel safer for everyone by converting one-way couplets into two-way traffic or one-lane traffic, and this could calm speeds and also allow for protected bike lanes. We also need safety improvements at key crossings like 22nd and Patterson, things like curb bump outs and user-activated warning lights. These are all solutions that are research-backed and have been proven to save lives. And for me, this is really personal. I'm a low income and I don't own a car. And so when our streets are unsafe, it disproportionately affects people like me who rely on walking, biking, or transit. Street space is public space and it should be designed for people of all kinds, not just people in cars. So I urge the council to take steps towards creating safer streets for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabelle. Our next speakers are Jasmine Hatmaker, followed by Pete Goldlust.
Hello, my name is Jasmine Hatmaker. I live in Ward 5 and I was born here in Eugene. There is a lot going on locally and nationally, and it's really nice to see so many community members that are here to speak about the issues that matter most. I'm here tonight to talk about road safety. As an adult, I lived in Southern California, Southern Florida, Arizona, and downtown Waikiki, which all have very dangerous driving, and you see a lot of accidents. When I decided to move back home, one of the things that it might surprise you to know is that I look forward to being back here with safer driving. And so it was really disappointing to find out how dangerous driving has gotten here. I know there are budget concerns that the city is currently going through, as well as the state, but we need to do more to prioritize road safety, especially if our goal is to have safe, walkable, and bikeable neighborhoods that are transit-oriented. 8% of our problem streets and intersections are responsible for 72% of fatal and serious injury crashes. There are low-cost changes that would increase safety now, like reducing on-street parking in areas that block the line of view for drivers and pedestrians where crossing takes place. Please do more now before more of our community members are injured or killed. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Our next speakers are Pete Goldlust, followed by Noah Burnell.
Goldlust, Ward 1. As a member of the City of Eugene's Public Art Committee, I'm deeply appreciative of a city initiative like the Across the Bridge Monument, recognizing historic wrongs done to people of color in Eugene in the past. By telling these stories publicly and giving them durable form, we hope to inform ourselves and our children about the dangers of committing such racist stupidities and cruelties in the future. We create these monuments because it's important to remember our past failures and because we hope to hold ourselves to a higher standard and to do better here and now and in the future. So it's deeply disappointing that at the very same time as we prepare a public acknowledgement of past racist wrongs, the city is now considering granting a permit to DHS to build an additional barrier on city property, providing added cover for the illegal and deeply racist activities against our community. The city is fully within its ability to deny any new barrier on city property that would prevent constitutional protected protest and obstruct legal observers from monitoring ICE's activities. The city's failure to stand firmly against the racist injustices happening here and now under your watch would be a shameful hypocrisy. Also, Mayor, Council, City Manager, follow-up question. What exactly do you think all those protesters will do when the city allows ICE to cut off public access around the Fed building? Surely you must realize that by allowing such a permit, the city would be declaring an unmistakable invitation to shift protest activities toward any ICE collaborators in our own city government. Surely you must understand that the City Hall would be a much more comfortable location to protest at. There's shade, there's seating, there's parking, there's bike access. If elected officials want to be confronted every day of the week by the rage of the protesters who are now focused on the Fed building, accepting a fence on city property would be a perfect way to do that. If our incoming city manager is planning to allow her office's passive support of ICE to establish City Hall as a focus of local protest, even before she arrives for her first day of work, that would be a hell of a first decision to make. Good luck.
Thank you, Pete. Our next speakers are Noah Burnell, followed by Kenzie Channing.
Hi, I'm Noah Burnell. I live in Ward 1 in downtown. Last time I was here, I recited the number 50. I will recite it again. That's around the number of people killed in the last 3 years by traffic violence on the streets of Eugene. I'm not going to try to repeat what other people have been here, many from GTFF. We've heard some city staffers talk about, well, we have a data-driven approach to responding to, they don't use the word traffic violence because they're allergic to that, but traffic accidents maybe. It's not really data-driven to say, well, we wait until someone dies on this particular street. We know what kinds of streets are unsafe. There are cities all over the country and all over the world doing good work on improving the safety. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't have to die. We don't have to be the worst. And you guys have the ability to make policy. And it is already Oregon state law that street corners are supposed to be daylighted for 20 feet. Not seem to be following that law in terms of how they mark up parking spots. I'm just asking you to direct your staff to look into what do we need to do to make our streets safer. And I'll say part of that is pedestrian infrastructure, which means you should not be permitting fences that block off sidewalks. But that's another issue.
Thank you, Noah. Our next speakers are Kenzie Channing, followed by Emma Serena Lavin.
My name is Kenzie Channing. I live in Ward 2 at Spencerview Apartments. My husband is the PhD student at U of O and a member of GTFF, but I happen to serve as the executive director of our community bike shop, Shift Community Cycles. So on the day of January 25th, these seemingly separate worlds overlapped with Eric's death at Patterson and 22nd because of traffic violence. It was and still is a terrible act of violence that affects the daily lives of my neighbors as they cross the street to get to school, and impacts who I'm seeing in the bike shop and who's willing to ride a bike these days. The city committed to a Vision Zero policy over a decade ago, yet we haven't seen an increase in safety. There are still vulnerable road users on bikes, walking with strollers, using mobility devices, trying to cross the road that have been killed. In fact, since August, we've lost 3 community members who have been on bicycles in the same way that Eric was, with the double threat of 2 lanes of traffic moving in the same direction, and one car stops and the other doesn't. It doesn't align with the city's Vision Zero initiative, and I'm asking for accountability to help uphold the Vision Zero policy that was put in place to prevent the deaths of my neighbors, my friends, and my fellow vulnerable road users who use a bike to get around every day. My kids are also starting to ride bikes. This one's on a little trike right now that only stays on the sidewalk, but her big sister is ready to ride to kindergarten next year. We have so many community members who don't have the option of using a car, and we need to create a safe environment for everyone, for every member of our community, no matter what their transportation mode is. When we commit so much space to cars, we're committing less to building community. If we could have a street mural, a parklet, a meeting space, or more trees in a lane instead of cars moving in front of our apartment, that would promote the safety and community that we should all have a right to living in this town. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenzie. Our next speakers are Emma Serena Lavin, followed by Meredith Jacobson.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to start with a couple of questions for our audience. How many people in this audience believe that if they were able to, and no one stopped them, this administration, this federal administration, would build actual death camps? And how many people in this audience believe that they themselves would be likely to end up in one of those death camps? So my question for you is that something that you want to be associated with in any way, shape, or form? The next question I have, too, is, well, they seem to care nothing. As a matter of fact, not seem. We know at this point that they care nothing for a political procedure. So why do we pretend that they do? Does it give us the advantage to pretend that they do? Or does it give them the advantage? Walls are actually not symbols of strength, but of weakness. And how many people think that what would happen behind ICE's big, beautiful wall would actually be acts of random acts of kindness? So tell ICE to go take its wall and shove it where the sun doesn't shine.
I would like to remind the audience that it's absolutely wonderful to raise our fingers in silent support, but please keep it silent to be respectful to all of the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Our next speakers are Meredith Jacobson, followed by Josh Easterland.
My name is Meredith Jacobson. I am here also as a member of the Graduate Teaching Fellows Federation. I am a PhD candidate in environmental studies. I am a resident of the Whitaker neighborhood in Ward 7, and I'm also a new mom. I'm here among my peers who have already spoken about to ask the City Council to prevent more senseless deaths on Patterson Street and around the city by prioritizing immediate infrastructure changes to promote pedestrian and bicyclist safety. While my family and I live in the WIT, my 1-year-old attends daycare at the Co-op Family Center at Spencerview Apartments. And while I didn't know Eric personally, I share my community's devastation at this tragic, senseless, and preventable death due to the speeding motorist, and more importantly, due to unsafe city planning that leads to these preventable deaths. My husband and I transport our daughter frequently to and from daycare in a bike trailer. We bike because we want to work toward a livable future for our daughter. We bike because we want her to imagine a world that isn't reliant on cars. We bike because we don't want to pay skyrocketing gas prices on a University of Oregon graduate salary. And we don't want others to have to do so either. And we want streets that are safe for all who need them. And we also bike because it is joyful. Trying to bike across Patterson already felt treacherous before Eric's passing. Now it feels terrifying. And as a mom, I feel like I have to make impossible choices between living the life I believe in for and with my child, and also protecting her from immediate danger. Meanwhile, when I do drive and come across pedestrians seeking to cross streets like Patterson, I worry that if I stop, I may inadvertently cause the situation that was fatal for Eric by a car speeding around me and ignoring the person trying to cross. I believe that the only viable solution is to reduce the roadway to 1 lane, to slow drivers down to a speed that is safe for a road that runs right past a major housing complex and daycare center. A crosswalk and other traffic calming measures should be put in immediately. In the meantime, I really ask that you prioritize this as much as you can as one insufficient but important way to honor Eric's life. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Meredith. Our next speakers are Josh Easterland, followed by Janet Wright.
Hello, City Councilors. I'm Josh Easterland, Director of Equitable Access Eugene, Ward 8. We are currently in the midst of a mental health crisis. Millions struggle with treatment-resistant depression, severe PTSD, addiction, and end-of-life anxiety. For decades, our approach to these conditions and the tools that might help them have been dictated by fear rather than evidence. I'm here to argue that it is time to end the criminalization of entheogenic plants and fungi. The war on drugs has, for over 50 years, treated users of these substances as criminals, driving potential medicine into the unregulated, dangerous underground market. This policy has not only failed to stop usage, but it has also prevented scientific research and created immense societal costs. It's irrational to continue arresting adults for possessing substances that have been used for thousands of years by indigenous cultures for healing and spiritual growth. We live in a psychedelic renaissance. Research from esteemed institutions, including Johns Hopkins and Harvard, has shown that in clinical settings, psychedelics can provide breakthroughs in treating PTSD and depression where traditional pharmaceutical approaches have failed. Veterans and patients are sharing stories of finding life-saving relief, demanding that we shift from stigma to science. It's important to understand that what we're talking about. Decriminalization does not mean a free-for-all corporate sale in every convenience store. It means making the personal possession, cultivation, and use of these substances the lowest law enforcement priority. It means stopping the practice of shattering lives through criminal records for personal intentional use. We've already seen success in the approaches taken in cities like Denver and Oakland, which have moved to decriminalize. These models prioritize community-based education and harm reduction, acknowledging that individuals can make decisions about their own consciousness and health. The criminalization of psychedelics was not based on safety, it was based on political control. To continue this prohibition is to deny your constituents a chance at healing and to deny ourselves a deeper understanding of the human mind. Let us be on the right side of history. Let us turn the page on this failed drug war. It's time to decriminalize, explore, and to heal. Thanks, guys. And I look forward to chatting with you all more in person if you have any time and interest. I've got a new baby at home, though, so I got to go to bed. Bye.
Thank you, Josh. Our next speakers are Janet Wright, followed by Charmaine Landing.
Hello, good evening. My name is Janet Wright, and I live in Ward 4. And I want to commend the City Council and the Mayor for making statements and declarations about the practices of ICE and DHS. But I believe that the time to do more is now. It is very important to protect the First Amendment rights of people in Springfield and Eugene to come to the federal building to protest what is happening by DHS and ICE. I've been there numerous times. It's already kind of scary that you've got the traffic on 7th Avenue going by very quickly. And a fence is going to restrict where people can stand and protest and exercise their First Amendment rights. I urge you to do all that you can to prevent this fence from happening, because I don't think it's really going to cause them to be any more safe, and it's definitely going to be risky for those who need to be there to exercise their First Amendment rights. And as you've heard this evening, legal observers are there to watch the activity going in and out of the federal building, the deportations, the detentions, and that is very important that we be able to watch what they're doing, not to let them hide behind a fence that we can't monitor their activity. So please consider keeping the ability for people to protest peacefully there in front of the federal building and refuse to allow this fence to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Our next speakers are Charmaine Landing, followed by Wynn Mansell.
Here again because I feel it's my obligation to speak up, as I truly believe allowing Amazon's distribution center will prove to be a regrettable mistake. It's in direct opposition to Eugene's vision for future industrial growth set forth in 2017. Maybe because most of you were probably not on the council at the time, its vision isn't carrying the protective weight that was intended. You may have grown tired of hearing about the negative impacts this center will have. Actually, a man said to me, "You only say negative stuff. Why don't you say something positive?" All I came up with is low-wage, non-union jobs being replaced by robotics and a property tax of under $300,000, which is a small portion of Eugene's operating budget. These positives don't balance the negatives. Eugenians currently get all their Amazon packages. Not having a distribution center won't change that. Saying no won't harm your constituents. It may only harm Amazon's bottom line. That's why I'm appealing to you. Eugene is a beautiful and desirable place. In its wisdom, it laid out a very doable vision for industrial development. The overlay calls for industries that align with our values around climate change, sustainability, local food systems, and natural resources. Such businesses do exist. It's not wishful thinking or pie in the sky to hold out for industries that pay a living wage and want to be good community partners. I understand Eugene now has $11 million for infrastructure for this zone. With these monies, Eugene has more to offer and attract a desirable industry. Please don't settle for minor short-term positives. Please work for a future that provides the community with sustainable long-term benefits. We rely on you as our leaders to stand between us and those that would exploit us. As I was finishing writing this just before I came, I received some disturbing news. A worker died at the Troutville, Oregon Amazon warehouse, and as his body laid on the floor for an hour, production in that area wasn't stopped. Workers were told not to look, but to keep working. This affirms why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine. Our next speakers are Wynn Mansell, followed by Stan Taylor.
Good evening, councilors and staff. Wynn Mansell, Ward 7. Going to start off once again by asking, do we know if Flock has responded to our request to return or delete our data? And if we don't know yet, what is the city's plan to hold them to account to get an answer on that? I'm going to keep asking that because I care a lot about transparency. I mean, we've all been here many nights for probably over a year now about what started with Flock, about the city conducting its business transparently in terms of the mass surveillance of our citizens. And with the way technology is going, many of the vendors that we are working with, all of us, like either city business or personal business or enterprise business, are increasing the use of data to effect mass surveillance on everybody involved. And I think it's imperative that we examine our relationships with those vendors and ourselves, personally, whatnot, with an ethical frame in mind, and be willing to not do business with vendors who would come to us saying, like, we have a new ALPR solution for you, we have a great AI solution for you, or to unroll in relationships that we no longer find to be ethically appropriate. And I think transparency in conducting those self-examinations is incredibly important so that we're doing those things for the full view of ourselves and our citizens. And that transparency really should extend to the way business is being done related to this fence. The fence is completely inappropriate for our community. Giving ICE the ability to hide behind a wall to conduct their evils without transparency on them will only embolden them. And at some point, all of us, and many of us in this room have begun, and I really hope the city steps up in doing the simple act of saying no to this evil. Really, the first thing you have to do when you're faced with fascism is do not comply, say no. Thank you.
Thank you, Wynn. Our next speakers are Stan Taylor, followed by David Eigel.
My name's Stan Taylor. I'm in Ward 1, and I represent indivisible Eugene Springfield. As I thought about what to say tonight that I haven't already said before, I realized I wanted to convey to you I understand how difficult your position can be, that the difference between vision and reality, meaning revenue, makes for sort of very hard work for you trying to figure out how to provide services as your budget goes up in terms of what the demands on the budget are, and your revenue doesn't cover it. And I want you to know I've experienced that in my own life, in the sense that earlier in life I was an attorney that actively practiced Chapter 11 bankruptcy law for family businesses. And that's the reorganization of businesses to keep them afloat, because their revenue can't meet their debts. I also have experienced at Lane Community College as bargaining chair for the faculty union when the higher education price index exceeded the consumer price index, and it was hard to meet obligations. So I understand the difficulty, but I also understand that growing your way out, that is, assuming that you can grow your way out of these problems, is not the correct answer. Not all development is equal. Much of the development that we see in our community winds up good for the developers and good for construction workers for a short period of time, but overall increases the inequality in our community. Not good. What we're looking at Amazon, we were seeing this kind of development that provides short-term gains, but long-term losses. Long-term losses in the form of poor jobs, long-term losses in the form of surveillance of employees, long-term losses in terms of health care for employees. When we look at Amazon, it is not the right type of development to help us with our revenue problems and meet our needs.
Thank you, Stan. Our next speakers are David Eigel, followed by Glenn O.
David Eigel, Ward 1. Mayor Knudsen, I am disappointed that I've received no response to my request that you state what action you're going to take with regard to the fraud that has been perpetrated on our community by the North Bank Memorial proponents. These include Talisha Brown and Lane County Commissioners Lori Trigger and Heather Buck. In 1945, there was an extremely acute housing shortage in Eugene and across the nation. A group of individuals approached the Lane County government and asked for help. Help was given. They were granted permission to squat on a rent-free basis on the land that the county had purchased for the future site of the new Ferry Street Bridge. They were informed that they would have to vacate when it was time for the bridge to be built. Squatting was allowed until 1949, when the bridge construction was to begin. A fraudulent dystopian narrative has been promoted by the memorial proponents. These include such asinine claims as 1. The residents were black. 2. They were living there because of their race because they were not allowed to live in Eugene. 3. Eugene was a sundown town. 4. The county employed eminent domain to force the North Bank residents off their land. 5. Had they been allowed to remain, they would have been allowed to claim the land under federal homesteading. 1. The residents were racially mixed, not black. Majority black, about a third white. They were living there because of the housing shortage, not because of their race or because they were not allowed to live in Eugene. Eugene has had black residents for over 135 years. Eugene was never a sundown town. Our residents never had to leave at 5 and come back in the morning. And the county had no reason to imply eminent domain. It was county land. It was not subject to federal homesteading, which had basically evaporated in the lower 38 states by the early 1930s in any event. Oh, yes, eminent domain. Yeah, it's not, as far as eminent domain is concerned, it's county land. County does not have to use eminent domain to take possession of its own land. They were just given an order to leave. It wasn't their land, so it wasn't being taken from them. Hundreds of thousands of dollars have been defrauded from our community by this group. Please take action.
Thank you, David. Our next speakers are Glenn O., followed by Shelley Devine.
Hi, my name is Glenn, and I am here to talk about the fence that's going to be put up around the federal building. Before I start about the fence, I'd like to mention that we have been at that building since July, June of last year, and continue to go there even after January 30th. And the absurdity of putting a fence around that building while also declaring a humanitarian crisis is baffling to me. I can't help but think about all of the egregious things that we've seen happen at that building, and the fact that the only 2 days that had any actual violence to it was not caused by us. It was caused by the federal government, who reacted very poorly to us not liking the execution of people in the city streets of Minnesota. I think that we know better. And when you comply to keep the peace, to sit there and say that, hey, if we just give them this, then maybe things will stop, that's not how things work, and we know that. I think that if it doesn't stop at the fence, then what's next? Are you going to let them just put up a guard tower, maybe a couple floodlights to spot us while we're, using their designated place for free speech? The fact that the courtyard is being left open in a small little bubble is absurd to me, because the people of this city have the right to let them know that they're wrong and that we don't condone what they do. You have the responsibility to represent us. And although you may not be able to decline those permits because of who's applying for it, there is a time where you have to make a choice between what is right and what is easy. And the right thing to do is to condemn that fence, ensure the safety of us, and just do what you can, you know? I think that the $11,000 that EPD quoted is egregious, and it's honestly crazy to me that you can sit there with a straight face and quote somebody $11,000 for some documents. I'm not surprised by it. I don't trust them a whole bunch, but at the same time, just facilitating things getting delivered to the building, like, it's not going to stop. People are still going to go to that building. People are still going to attend there and protest, because that's...
Thank you, Glenn. Our next speakers are Shelley Devine, followed by Misty Strawberry Bowman.
Hey everyone, Shelley Devine, Ward 3. I just want to use this moment to make sure that everyone is aware that International Workers' Day is coming up on May 1st. So there is no school, no work, no shopping. This is a nationwide general strike. Here in Eugene, there will be a rally and a march at noon at Morse Free Speech Plaza at 799 Oak Street. And if anyone wants to learn more, there's additional info at maydaystrong.org. No one wants a flocking fence. I think the theme here tonight is people. Like, this community, we care about each other. And I'll just address you guys. I am on Signal Chat with a lot of you guys. We have gotten to know each other on a first-name basis by participating in local politics and being a part of this process with you guys, and we want to work collaboratively. And I think that we're really motivated and determined to continue to put people first, and that's people over profits, people over environmental harm. And as, is it Cheyenne that was just saying about the Troutdale Amazon worker that died? That story is just coming out on April 13th, and this person's death took place on April 6th. So this is a company that actively works to hide the deaths of employees and keep the deaths and the injuries secret. And I just can't imagine that that's something that we want to get behind. And I know Mr. Keating, and I believe it's Matt, and I think that I like you a lot, and I'm still figuring it out. But you said when you were kind of like, it felt like cheerleading for Amazon last night, well, 75% of the country uses Amazon. That might be true, but just because a lot of people use something doesn't mean it's not really harmful. And Amazon operates kind of like a drug addiction for a lot of people. Like, people are mindlessly just ordering, even in bed at night. Like, people can't stop themselves. So it doesn't mean we want to like roll out the red carpet for this fascist collaborating death company. Okay?
Thank you, Shelley. Our next speakers are Misty Strawberry Bowman, followed by Erica Lyon.
My name is Misty Strawberry Bowman. I want to read from Ursula K. Le Guin's Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction. When she was writing the book that ended up as The Three Guineas, Virginia Woolf had the thought of reinventing English. In one of the entries, heroism is defined as botulism, and hero in Woolf's dictionary is bottle. The hero as bottle, a stringent reevaluation. I now propose the bottle as hero, not just a bottle of gin or wine, but bottle in its older sense of a container in general, a leaf, a gourd, a shell, a net, a bag, a sling, a sack, a bottle, a pot, a container, a holder, a recipient. The first cultural device was probably a recipient, so says Elizabeth Fisher in Woman's Creation. But no, this cannot be. Where is that big, long, hard thing, a bone, I believe, that the ape man first bashed somebody in with in the movie, and then grunting with ecstasy at having achieved the first proper murder, flung it up into the sky, and whirling there, it became a spaceship, thrusting its way into the cosmos where it fertilized it without, oddly enough, any womb, any matrix at all? I don't know. I don't even care. We've all heard about the sticks and the spears and the swords and the things to bash and poke with, but we have not heard about the things to put things in, a container for the things contained. That is a news story. That is news. And yet old. And so long as culture and being human was explained as originating from and elaborating upon the use of long, hard objects for sticking, bashing, and killing, if that's what it took to make a weapon and kill with it, then I was either extremely defective as a human or not human at all. That's right, they said. What you are is a woman, possibly not human, certainly defective. Now be quiet while we go on telling the story of the ascent of man the hero. However, if it is a human thing to put something because it is useful, edible, or beautiful into a bag or a basket, and then take it home with you, home being another larger kind of pouch or bag, a container for people, and then later take it out and share it, if to do that is human, then I am a human being, fully, freely, and gladly for the first time. And still there are seeds to be gathered, and room in the bag of stars. There is room in Eugene's carrier bag for stars in our pocket. There is not room in our carrier bag for walls, ice, or light pollution. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Misty. Our next and final speaker is Erica Lyon.
Erica Lyon, Ward 8. So there's been plenty of discussion tonight on building safer, better streets for bicyclists. And I couldn't be more encouraged as a bicyclist myself to see this sort of civic engagement on this issue, which has long needed to be addressed. However, there's been some reluctance to call traffic violence what it is, which is traffic violence, not only because of how our streets are designed, but also because of how drivers behave. One example is just last Thursday when I was at a Signs of Fascism protest there on the corner of High Street and 6th Street, right across from the 5th Street Public Market. And a white truck driver came within a couple inches of jumping the curb and could have easily killed one of us. It was an act of aggression. He was seeing how close he could come to us without actually causing any harm. It was aggression. And not only that, but at pretty much every single protest I've been to, there's been at least one truck driver that's coal rolled us. And if you don't know what that term means, it's where they spew out this big black smoke, black exhaust into our faces, harming our health and harming the planet. And I see this regularly from truck drivers, not only at protests, but I've even been coal rolled just while I was biking down the street, just by myself, just minding my own business. I've been coal rolled. And that's not even to mention the number of drivers that are revving their engines at all hours of the day and night, including when I'm trying to sleep. And actually, I had the privilege of being in Germany last summer, and I learned that there it's actually illegal to cause undue noise like that because it's disrespectful to the peace of people around you. So we should have something similar here. They even make motorcycles to be quiet. They make them so you can't rev the engine loudly and obnoxiously. So let's please also design better city streets and smarter design, but also the behavior of the drivers also needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Council President, that was our final speaker.
Thank you, Cherish. I now close the public comment period. Are there any comments from City Council? Councilor Keating.
Thank you, Council President. And thank you to the scores of individuals who came out tonight to provide public testimony. A special heartfelt thank you to GTFF and Friends of Eric, who joined us this evening advocating for increased investments in traffic calming and bicycle and pedestrian safety. I join you in such strong advocacy. Thank you. The intersection, or at least the street of Pearl, was mentioned tonight, I believe, by Scott. Pearl and 6th, I believe, is where the start to the north of the 5th Street pedestrian mall exists. The pedestrian mall between 5th and 6th. And just to the south happens to be the old federal building between 6th and 7th, between Pearl and Hyde. A friend of mine mentioned today, waxing nostalgic, about the pedestrian mall that used to exist downtown Eugene. We got to thinking that if the feds can build up on their property, what can Eugene do to embrace a pedestrian mall on our property? If it's going to create an unsafe situation for protesters, when I say it, I mean the erection of a wall that's largely out of our control, and I'll ask city staff to better define that, please. What is in our control, I believe, are the perimeter, or the city streets around said federal building, where I've only had the distinct honor of joining the community once in these past 90 days or so at the O&A Alex Preddy Memorial. There are community members who've been out there day in and day out, and I thank you for the advocacy. But I wonder, city manager and city attorney, if we can comment or better articulate for the community what our role is in regards to federal property, and I think I know the answer, and then what steps there might be for this body to explore for safer streets and for safer protest, all the way up a block even, near the existing pedestrian mall, wherein we could encourage commerce, we could encourage safe protest, and we could do our small part to combat the overreach, the egregious overreach of our federal administration.
Thank you, Councilor Keating. Councilor Zelenka?
Councilor, there was a question there to city staff.
So sorry.
Councilor Keating. You are correct that the city does not have any authority to regulate the federal government and then building a fence on federal property. My understanding, there has been communication between the General Services Administration about the potential to apply for a temporary right-of-way use permit in order to deliver materials and to potentially, I don't know the detail on this, but potentially to be used as a temporary space for construction. So that would be the limit of the city permit that would be applied for related to this, but we have not received a permit application today.
Clarification, please. So to clarify, there are no permits for fencing that the city offers. And the only permit that you're alluding to is a permit that has not been applied for called a temporary right-of-way use permit?
So fencing on private property, on county property, on city property is regulated, but we cannot regulate the property owned by the federal government. So just to clarify that. And the type of permit that has been discussed to be applied for would be a temporary use of the right-of-way. So we're talking days, not years, right, to temporarily close a portion of the right-of-way to deliver materials or to help enable construction. But that is not we have not received an application at this time.
Thank you. Can I final follow-up, if I may?
At least that's my understanding.
I appreciate the opportunity to ask these questions, and thank you for the follow-up time. Does the city council have any authority or say in the use of our streets, whether they are pedestrian streets, pedestrian malls, or vehicular streets?
Yes,
in the extent that you have code that you've adopted, that you currently have adopted in Chapter 5, which delegates authority to our traffic engineer to actually make administrative decisions regarding whether a street is open to vehicular traffic, closed to vehicular traffic. That is all currently as written in your code as delegated to our traffic engineer. That's done through administrative action. Your code is your code. You can change your code. And if you want to become the decision maker on that, that would be something that is currently a decision was made to delegate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilor Keating. Now I can turn to Councilor Zelenka.
Thank you. For those that are interested, on Wednesday, our work session at noon is going to be on Vision Zero and traffic safety. So if you're interested in that, please pay attention to that. I think it'll be informative. And the person that talked about excessive noise, that's been a pet peeve of mine for many years. It's already illegal. Problem is the lack of our ability to enforce it. And so that's really the problem. I hate those cars and motorcycles that go crazy. With regard to the proposed fence around the federal building, I get you don't like what ICE is doing. Many of us have already expressed our similar opinions about ICE. Many of us have done so from up here. I've done so multiple times from up here. And I appreciate that there are a few, if any, other forums that allow you to speak about and against ICE other than this one. And I wish that the council had all the powers that people think that we have or think that we should have. We'd be an incredibly powerful entity, but that's just not the case. The reality is we have pretty limited and very specific powers. And so while many of us don't like the fence or proposed fence around the federal building and think it's a bad idea, that seems to be anathema to democracy and freedom of speech and freedom of protest, seems pretty much par for the course for Trump. So while I totally support your right to come here and tell us your opinion, please do a little bit of homework on what we can and cannot do. If you don't know, find out. Like what Jackson Smith did today, who spoke earlier. He apparently had done that, and thank you for your comments, Jackson. But when you propose things that we cannot do, and we shouldn't, and you should know that we can't do, and we've told you that we can't do it, your testimony loses credibility. And to be clear, we don't allow or disallow, nor do we permit fences on anybody's property. We have no role in determining if anybody can be allowed to build a fence. Even the feds, there's safety rules and things like that that need to be adhered to. But and to be clear, answering questions and making sure that no sidewalks are blocked is not collusion. That's actually furthering what we want to do. I talked to the city manager today, and we're going to make sure that we can all walk safely all around that building and be there whenever we want to. So, but more importantly, the council doesn't get to apply laws and or make up laws that don't matter, that are based on whether or not we don't like you or that you don't like what we don't like what you say. So, and nor should you want us to. You be careful what you ask for, because some other council can use that against you in the future.
Okay, I will ask the crowd to please keep silent, even when in disagreement. Thank you. Councilor Ye.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. People often ask me if public forums are hard, and they can be, but to be honest, they're often more inspiring than difficult. Tonight, we've talked about traffic violence, immigrant rights, land use, light pollution, public art, mental health supports, public transportation, housing, the city budget. I probably missed a few in that list. And this is why we're here, right? To hear from all of you and what's important to you. And I really appreciate you guys taking out your time to be here today. I wanted to I know we've lost a few people, so maybe Dylan and Connor have already left. As someone who spends 60% of my transportation time on a bus, I totally agree with some of the things that you suggested. And I hope if you're watching this that you will contact LTD and share your thoughts. The folks over at LTD really do care, and it can be very helpful to them to hear real-world scenarios and how their system
acts and helps and also supports and sometimes doesn't support the needs of the folks in our community. I also really appreciate everyone who used traffic violence instead of traffic accidents. These are often not accidents. There are lots of intentional decisions behind how different modes of transportation can not work together in a way that is safe. And so I appreciate everyone coming out and talking about that. Just lastly, Matt, this may not be a question you can answer tonight, but I would really appreciate understanding a little bit more about what our options are for this temporary use of the right-of-way permit. I understand there are lots of things that we cannot do, but I see no reason we should be being helpful if there are ways that we cannot be helpful in creating and helping this fence, which is obviously ridiculous for all the reasons that folks have shared tonight. So, and I think that's all I've got tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Ye. Councilor Groves?
Thank you, Council President. I was actually going to start off on something different than what I'm going to say in a moment here, but I do want to say on the traffic violence thing, I am very sympathetic to that. In my former life as a firefighter, I've been on far too many fatal accidents and serious injury accidents over the years, especially when pedestrians and bicyclists are in travel lanes and they don't fare well when a vehicle hits them. And so anything we can do to make our community safer, I fully support. I did like the idea of the drunk bus, but that's for LTD. The city council doesn't get to make that decision, but I think it's a spot-on idea. And I also want to thank Councilor Zelenka for speaking up. I find it interesting when people want us to listen to all of you, and we do week after week, politely. And then when it's our turn to talk, and usually we don't say much, but because it's our chance to listen to you, but when we do speak, it'd be nice if people extended that same respect to us. We're all up here trying to do the best we can. We have, as one gentleman said tonight, very difficult decisions we try to make. We try and find balance. And the other thing to remember, how what appears to always be a majority that shows up in this room and speaks does not represent the full community. There are people with vastly different views, and we hear them all the time. It's just not always in these public meetings. That doesn't mean your voice is not important, but it also doesn't discount the voices that aren't here, that do speak up. So we're always trying to find where's that balancing point, where's that reasonableness that we can apply to make our community better. And although I sometimes disagree with some of my colleagues, I can say I've been here long enough to know that every one of them is doing what they think is best for this community, and they care deeply about what happens in this community. And for that, I do thank my colleagues, and I do respect them for that. And then the last comment I wanted to make was, I picked up where Councilor Keating was going with the streets. And my understanding, although we can certainly control Pearl Street and High Street, West 6th and West 7th are part of the state highway system. Isn't that correct, City Manager?
I believe they have state highway designations, but they are our right-of-way, so those were jurisdictionally transferred.
So we could just shut them down?
I believe we would have to work with ODOT on any impediment to freight using those streets.
I'm sure we would hear from ODOT. I've dealt with ODOT and the state on transportation issues as fire chief, and they're pretty protective of what they consider theirs. So that's been my experience. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor Groves, and thank you all for coming and for caring enough to be here. What I've heard from my fellow councilors here is that we love free speech in all of its varieties. So again, thank you, and thank you those who stayed. I am, like I said, our public comment period is closed, but we do have one more agenda item, and that is to approve our consent calendar 2, which is our resolutions annexing some land. So if there are no questions from council on these items, I will turn to the council vice president to put a motion forward.
I move to approve the items on consent calendar 2.
Second.
Any discussion?
Council President, state law just advanced something that Councilor Clark has been advocating for for years. And I wonder if this is how those voluntary annexations will look like in the future. I see head nods from my colleague, but I just wanted to ask staff that as those are rolled out, and how many do we predict? And that's what this is. Let me just pause there. Will those voluntary annexations mirror what's in front of us today?
Councilor, are you talking about the spot annexations that was passed? So the annexations before you, I believe, follow our normal requirements. So they're contiguous and meet all the different requirements to be annexed. The new state law allows, in certain circumstances, for properties that aren't directly connected to existing city limit to come in to that's my understanding at a high level. Catherine.
Are you just asking format-wise, this is the way you can expect to see it? Yeah, I would expect so, but we would just want to make sure we don't have to check any additional boxes or all that, but we will want to streamline it. But also, if you want to have an opportunity to talk about it, having them on consent too allows that to happen. And so I would expect it to look similar, but I can't. We'll know it when the first one comes through, and then you'll see it.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Keating. I hope that the bill will allow us to see many more pages full of voluntary annexations. And so with that, I will now take a vote on this motion. Oh, I'm so sorry, Councilor Evans. I did not see you in the queue.
No, I just wanted to mention this because our city manager just responded to Councilor Groves about Highway 99 and 6th and 7th Street. And my understanding about 5 years ago is when Department of Transportation at the state level turned over basically everything south of Beltline, which was 6th and 7th, over to the city of Eugene's jurisdiction. And so we have jurisdiction over all of that property going all the way down Highway 99 and 6th and 7th. And so we have the regulatory power over that section of roadway that is no longer in the jurisdictional canon of the state. Is that the correct? We did? Oh, my bad. I'll make my comment after we vote on the motion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, councilors, for clarifying. So with that, I will call the vote. Our votes pass 8-0, and that concludes our fourth agenda item. We do have a few minutes if we would like to answer Councilor Evans' questions. And we still have Councilor Groves in the queue. Councilor Evans?
No, I just was wanting, city manager clarify where our jurisdictional issues cross or don't cross because of what we did with State Department of Transportation with ODOT.
Councilor Evans, you're correct. There were actually 2 jurisdictional transfers that occurred that transferred ownership of Highway 99 coming down into 6th and 7th, going on to Broadway, then Franklin, all the way near I-5. So it's just south of Beltline to just west of I-5 in city jurisdiction. As I shared with Councilor Groves, there is still some oversight from ODOT because it's a state highway, but it is within our jurisdiction.
Okay, Councilor Groves?
Thank you, Council President. I'll try and make this quick. And again, this is going back to not just my time as fire chief, but also I serve on MPC. I have for almost 6 years now. And my understanding was when we took over responsibility for maintenance and our street design standard. but the state still kept jurisdiction over how the highway is used, and we cannot block it off. And could we find out for sure on that?
Yeah, I believe you're correct. We cannot block it off. Again, there's oversight on it being used for a state highway function, but it does allow us to use our design standards. That was well said.
We can use our design standards, and one of the things that I'm hoping to accomplish is make safer pedestrian crossings on 6th, 7th. We have the right to do that. We just can't stop the flow of traffic. Thank you.
Councilor Keating?
On 6th and 7th.
6th and 7th, Highway 99 North. It's that whole.
Right, but not High and Pearl.
No, High and Pearl, we can do whatever we want, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Locals.
Just wanted to clarify.
Councilors, we're a bit out of order
We are.
here.
Yeah, we are.
can continue this
I'm good at
discussion.
that.
I am going to now close the April 13th, 2026 City Council meeting. We are adjourned.